So, I think
Let's get it started, and
Typically we don't.
we'll hash that out. All right, 6:15, I'd like to call this development committee meeting to order. Roll, please.
Lee,
Yes,
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
stand for the pledge. Mr. Dickon?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've got three things to discuss tonight. It's gonna be a busy night, so we're gonna try and roll through this, keep things moving here, so stop me if I start going too fast, but we've got a lot to talk about. Before we do get started, did we wanna give, does the committee wanna give, Scenic, I know we're discussing them, do we wanna give them any opportunity to discuss? Do we wanna allow them to speak, or Scott, any input on that?
It's up to you, the representative from Scenic View is here to answer any questions you might have, so.
It's up to the committee.
I think it, I don't know, does time permit for that?
How about we come back to it, let's, we don't have to, we could do that last. Does anyone have a problem doing that last? So if we've got time, they can speak, if not, we don't. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I feel like we have a lot of stuff to cram in here.
Yep. So let's just start with the discussion of the community reinvestment area. Scott, you want to brief us on that?
Sure, so the colored map in your packet shows the convergence of 3 community reinvestment areas within the city. There's a gentleman interested in the parcels highlighted in yellow. It's zoned M1. He is interested in doing office warehouse type concepts and has stated that in order to be competitive, he would need to have access to a CRA. I've attached the other map showing the individual CRAs, but the colored map on top is the one kind of give you the clearest picture. So as we can see, these properties are sandwiched within kind of the convergence of 3 CRAs. So essentially tonight was just to get development committee's thoughts on potentially expanding one of those CRAs to include those properties.
So, give me 1 second. Does the committee have any thoughts? I'll just start by saying, obviously, it is sandwiched in between 3 of them. Just at first glance, it kind of looks like it makes sense. The process for this would be what if we decided that we were for it?
I have not explored that yet. I just wanted to see development committee's thoughts, that if you
Okay.
were against it, I wouldn't explore it. If it was something you would want to consider, then I would, get more information on how about go to do that.
I guess I just need more information about the business and what it is exactly they wanna do.
It's essentially, they would do spec buildings for office warehouse, so you'd have office and then a warehouse component. That's what they're investigating at this time. They don't have anything, they don't have anybody online that, will fill those buildings, but they said they'd like to do some spec buildings and get it up and running. But in order to do that, they stated that they would need to be included in a CRA
And this is,
to make it competitive.
I'm trying to figure out exactly where this is. This is
Macon Broad,
this the same discussion we've had before about the same company?
Oh, I don't know if it's the same company.
they came in for development committee that showed a retail component, I think assisted living, apartments, patio homes, and single family, all in this area.
Right.
And if we were to entertain this, then, if we were, they would still have to go through all the zoning and
That's
all the different, everything. And even if they decide to sell, it'd be competitive for someone else. So we're not binding, this property to a certain plan. We're just making the property more competitive, and it would have to go through all the processes.
That's correct.
So, do you see any, the positives being that it's in a good area, I mean, you know, seems to make sense just at first glance, like I said on the map. You see any negatives?
At this point, I do not.
Okay. Andy, you got anything?
I'm just looking at the existing, it looks like the existing zoning on this is professional research, is that correct?
M1,
It's M1.
light manufacturing.
So, oh, okay, so I'm just seeing the wrong blue, I'm sorry, okay. Just different shade, nice
Mhm.
close shades of blue there.
Yep.
Okay.
What would you, once we get some more feedback here from the committee, what would you need from us? Are you asking for a motion, or are you asking for
It
some
would,
feedback?
it would be feedback to say that this is something we would entertain. Scott, please go get some more information about how we would go about this, and then I would provide that at the next development committee meeting.
Okay.
But I didn't want to go down that road if it was something that development committee was, you know, adamantly opposed to.
Just one of three, I would entertain it. I would like more info on it. It may make sense, it may not. It's definitely not I'm for it, it's, how about we look into it, but I want all, everyone to weigh in
Yeah,
on that.
I'd certainly like to see what they're proposing within the CRA. I don't know if they're ready to give us that information yet or not.
I don't know that they have enough of that information yet,
Okay.
but I can get some more information from the gentleman to say, kind of give us an idea of what you're looking to do, just so development committee has more of an idea if this is something that they want to move forward with. So I think probably more information from both us and them to see how we would accomplish this theoretically.
Mrs. Carter, do you have anything?
In order to make any decision at all, I need more information.
Right.
So, I think we anybody through a lot of hoops to say, no, I'm not for it, but I can't say I am or not if I have, you know, I just,
All right, I mean, I think we all, from what I'm gathering, we all would agree, just bring us back more information, and we're not opposed to it, we're not for it or against it, just, we need more information,
Will do.
so. For time's sake, is there anything else on that, can we move forward?
We can move forward.
Okay. I'm gonna skip the scenic view and come back to it. Anybody have any issues with that? Okay. So let's talk, about our proposed comprehensive plan. Obviously, we had our meeting on that, our special meeting, and, it got kicked back to the development committee for, and this is just me saying phase two, I don't know if you wanna call it something else, but to take another look at it. Scott and I've had several talks about it, since then. For tonight, because we're pressed for time, we don't have time to dive into this, but I would like to come up with a game plan to tackle it. I think and again, this is just me and Scott spitballing ideas, so I definitely want committee feedback on this, there was, I haven't looked at it in probably, I don't know, 5-6 days, is there 7 parts to it?
I believe so.
Okay, so the map is gonna be the biggest part of it, but I think we just set a goal of trying to maybe get something back by the summer, we take it part by part. Maybe even some of the smaller parts, like, we would say, the next development committee meeting, we're gonna tackle part 1 and 2, cause they're small. And then we come to an agreement on that, and then we tackle part 3. And then maybe it takes us 2 meetings to go over the map. But I think if we take it section by section, we could, wrap this up by the end of the summer, and maybe we could, possibly act on it. One thing that, I haven't asked you yet, Scott, that, I wanna say, and I'll let the committee chime in here, is, from the feedback that I've gotten from committee members, and I haven't talked to all of them,
Council members?
no, committee members, to the comprehensive,
Oh, for the steering
the
committee.
steering committee.
Right.
Sorry. It seems like, I don't wanna say this the wrong way, so, it seems like we kinda got the bargain package on with the company to do this. And we didn't really take on the whole thing, we just kinda took on some of it
Mhm.
because of cost. I think we need to take a look at, if we're gonna do it, I think we do it all the way, or we find a different way to do it, in-house. But I feel like parts 6 and 7 kinda got, we'll do those later. Well, if we're gonna adopt this is my opinion, we should really do this all the way. So, I'd just like to get some prices from the company, to finish this thing all the way, and also what they would charge us to just, I guess, start, as we take on each section, to go back in and revise, and then take on, cause I think 6, and one of them's traffic, one of them's infrastructure, that's probably not cheap, and that's a big task. I don't think we have the resources to do that in-house, maybe we do. So, that's my 2 cents, that was my way of kinda attacking it, turn it over to the committee, so. Ms. Carter, you wanna start?
I kind of feel the same way. I feel like, I would like a breakdown from, the company to find out, you know, what they could do for what amount, like how far, because as we break it down, like you said, I mean, I think the meeting showed us that we needed to really delve into it and get detailed in each section. And we have a great start. We started with a great place that allows us now to tailor it to our city, with some revisions and such. So I think I would want to know exactly what I was paying for. So if there were, you know, levels, you know, like the next step, what would they, you know, and what does that entail? What do they provide us?
Mhm.
Like you said, as we look at it, I think we'll determine what we can do and then what we're gonna need help with, and what's gonna require assistance, where we need to pay them. Obviously, I don't wanna just open up the checkbook and say, let's go, especially in uncertain times. So I think I would need to know exactly what I was getting and make sure it's something that we need their help with before we move forward.
So I had just a couple thoughts after that special meeting. One, I think it would be good for the committee to understand what council's questions were. If there were questions supplied to you, Scott, prior to the special meeting, so that we can kind of gather them up and get an idea of what potentially the council and so forth were looking to achieve, or what they were seeing was maybe deficient.
Mhm.
That may give us some good ideas on where to focus some energy with OHM and without them. The other one I thought was, you know, there are definitely some big ticket items. The utilities, the infrastructure, the roadways, the water and sewer, the schools, those type of things are gonna take some time and some major effort to dive into. And I would throw soils in there too. That we need to kind of have those maps kind of put together and amassed so we can actually look at, you know, what areas can handle, you know, development, and what areas are not programmed to handle for it, including, you know, the idea that there are conservation areas that are already in place, small ones, maybe, you know, seeds to a conservation area, and those areas could be identified for further conservation. So I think it may be more complex than just looking at section by section. It may be getting people started on that infrastructure part. What's gonna take our long lead time? What's our critical path? And critical path may be the infrastructure, getting that information kind of moving so that by the time we get to the big picture of the future use plan, we have that information already. We're not waiting on it. That's all I was thinking about, was just trying to identify in the comprehensive plan the items that are gonna take a little bit longer, what's gonna take a little bit of more work, and help get those started and get those in the process of getting that information together. And then the big picture stuff, I mean, we talked about 80,000 feet right now is what they looked at. You know, where do we want them to look? Do we want them to look at 15,000 feet? Or do we want them to look at very, very specific, you know, to the point where we're understanding what, you know, what kind of cut-through traffic we have, you know, just really detailed. How much do we want to get into? And that goes to a point of what do we want. I think the first thing we may want to do after we identify the long-term project items is really identify what we want the comprehensive plan to be. How much of a guide, how much of a, for lack of a better term, it's a zoning tool. And whether you say it is or it isn't, it's utilized that way. We heard that. So we have to kind of understand what that plan is gonna do. There are some examples out there that I think are good for us to digest and understand how other cities did it, but they're costly, they're expensive. There's an example up in Worcester. Have you had a chance to look at that one
I
yet?
have not yet.
So there's one up in Worcester that does, instead of saying, you know, between this street and this street, and this, you know, quadrant area, this, it's gonna be this type of development. Instead, it says, hey, the infrastructure in this area supports development, so this is a targeted development area. And you can bring in, you know, these are the things that we wanna try to see in that area, but it doesn't say you're gonna have, you know, 2 units per acre. It doesn't say that they're gonna be 2 stories. It doesn't say that they're gonna, you know, densities and so forth. It says this is our targeted development area. So there's different ways to do a comprehensive plan that maybe, as you guys probably got from some of my questions, one of my worries is that we have 7 divisions, and there's one division that says future use. And if we don't follow the other 6 divisions, how does that 7th division actually become valid? Well, it is valid. And he said, Aaron said clearly, the future use plan is a legal document. But I worry that if we're not following all the other sections, and the other sections aren't important, then what's the future use plan? It's really, it's a great picture, but it doesn't mean anything because we didn't do anything else. So that's my concerns. You know, I think the steering committee would be really great to hear from, for the development committee to talk to them, you know, bring them in and talk to them and say, you know, what did you think, you guys, you know, how did you think this was progressing? What did you think this was? Because I've heard also from a couple of the steering committee members that they were very surprised to hear that it was their plan. And I think that they were shocked to hear that. They participated absolutely, and they did a great job, but I don't think they understood that it was going into this document that was gonna be pretty, could be restrictive to some parcels. Anyhow, those are my thoughts, but yeah, I agree with you that we can take parts, you know, we can look at the parts, but I think the first thing we gotta think about is, what do we want the plan to be?
Right. So with all those thoughts, putting those kind of together, first thing, could you do, I listened to part of the utility committee meeting and talk about the wastewater and for the sludge, the à la carte pricing. So I'm gonna use that term. Could you get from them an à la carte pricing? And I would like, personally, one of the prices that I'd like to see, and from what I'm hearing too from everybody else, what's a cost to finish this thing, all the way, complete? I mean, it might be high, but I'd like to just see it so I can grasp it, to go in and complete this thing all the way, and not cut any corners. And I'm not saying the corners were cut, but I'm just saying, so we're not doing it just halfway. That would be the number one thing. And then, one thing I wanted to add too, that map is such a point of contention, and we've all looked at it, and we all see different things. What I'd like to know from the company, I think we take it section by section, but I think as we go, we massage that map, and it can be a working document. And I wondered if they would allow you to have some type of, so each meeting we've got the map up, and we could make, or you could sit there with your clicker and go, oh, okay, let's make changes as we go, and then at the end, we could do a final review, present it to council. I just think that map, when you get to it in section 4, there's gonna be so many changes, why don't we look at it every meeting and massage it? So, is that possible? Could we find that out? If you could get access to be able to just have the map and change the colors on it? And we could get it up on the big screen for each meeting to, what do you guys think of that? What's the committee?
That's fine.
I think it's definitely useful to have it and understand what it's saying to us while we're going through the sections. There's one other piece too, there's all the little edits that have to be made. As Dr. Holman was saying, and so forth. There's edits that we can do those pretty quickly. I mean, those are just details that we can go through.
I think let them do all the editing with the exception of the map.
Yep.
And it just would help, I think, so we all have perspective. So, the last thing, and I wanna hear from the committee, the way I envision is we'll schedule, here at the end of the meeting, we'll schedule the next meeting, we'll tackle part 1, we'll look at the map. But as we progress, I'm gonna send an email out to council, hey, send us any of your feedback just on section 1. We're gonna be discussing section 1. Anything you got on that, send it to us, we'll have it ready for the meeting. But also, just like we're talking about massaging the map, keep looking at that map. Is there anything, I've already sent one out about the map. So I'm sure council's looking at that. But then we're getting council input and we don't have to go back at the end of it and go, what's your input? We'll ask for it at each section. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think, really what we need to know as we go into this is how detailed we get is how restrictive we make it. So, I mean, we have to decide, is it a tool or is it a Bible with a small b, as Mr. Barstow likes to put it. So, I mean, we have to determine, as we go through this, enough to guide us well and keep things, but not to tie hands. And that's a challenge. So, I think a section at a time, feedback from council a section at a time with as much, feedback as possible is helpful for me, knowing.
And I think introduction is where so next meeting, section 1, I think we dive into what we want this to be. That's what section 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out if we can get the map and all that stuff, but, I feel good about that plan. Is there any, did I miss anything? Is there anything I said that people there's anyone I'm comfortable with, or?
I'm perfectly fine with that, Tom.
Scott, your feedback on that?
However, development committee wants to proceed.
Chris, you got anything?
I think it's a great plan, to break it down step by step, it's a great plan.
Okay.
Can we invite at least the steering committee to come in on that next meeting?
Do you wanna do it then?
I think it's a plan overview. I think you can actually get both 1 and 2 done at the same time. Plan overview and, that's an introduction,
Yeah.
and the foundation. I would think those would be 2 big pieces that kind of shape
Okay.
what you want the plan to end up being.
Okay. All right, so that'll be the plan. I'll brief council on it tonight and the reports. Here when we're done with scenic view, Kathy, we'll try and get another meeting scheduled. But I wanna get them up here now, so we'll go from there. Anything else on that? We'll get scenic view and then we'll come back to schedule another meeting. Okay. All right, so scenic view, Scott, would you bring us up to speed on that?
So there were some concerns with language and the development text and the HOA documents that the provisions for clearing of trees was not uniform throughout. And there were no provisions in terms of if the HOA were to dissolve. So the applicants prepared a revised development text and revised HOA documents that show their proposed language in terms of how they would address those concerns.
So, Andy, I know you've kind of spearheaded this a little bit, and I think you actually, did you meet with
I
with
did.
them?
Yep, I did.
Um,
And what the concern was, you know, they, and I think we voiced this at the one council meeting was, you know, this is we've got a lot of diversions for this project. And council, if it's not figured out at this point in time for the development tax and/or their deed restrictions, it doesn't come back to council. Once it goes out, it's basically, out there in the approval. The concerns that I think we had, I didn't bring my whole list with me, but there were probably 5 or 6 different concerns. Tree clearing was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the reasons why we're not doing the gravity sanitary is because of tree clearing. But at the same time, throughout the document, it had several places where, you know, the first time it said, you know, tree clearing only around the house and driveway. Then the second time it said in the document, it was tree clearing around the house and driveway and accessory building. And then the last time it was tree clearing around the house, you know, accessory building, and any dead brush or anything else that the owner might feel that is unsightly. And I'm paraphrasing terribly, but the idea that I tried to put out there when I met with them was, guys, let's make this all one, make it the same throughout, whether it's on the plans, in the development text, or in the deed restriction, let's make it all the same, and make sure we all agree on it. The other one was the issue with how do we keep if the HOA goes away, these residents that are gonna be living there are gonna have some expectation of gated community and roads and we're gonna have some expectations if we're taking things over for maintenance, that they are built to city standards, and therefore, we should either have them build them to city standards, or have some kind of way to fund them being rebuilt to city standards, and putting the residents that are in that location on notice that they are 100% responsible for these costs, that this is not going to be spread out across the community. Given the uniqueness of what they're trying to do, which is not, and I told them this when I met, I'm not against it, it's just I wanna make sure we're covering all the bases for a council 10 years down the line, so they don't get bombarded with the questions of, you know, why isn't the city paying for this? There were some other minor issues back and forth about wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
There were some issues about, we had some residents bring up some concerns about wet areas in the wooded area, and some drainage issues. We brought up some drainage concerns. We did make it very clear that, the paths that they're proposing are all internal, so they're not for public use, they're really for their own association's use, and I don't think that changed necessarily. It's
No.
still what they're proposing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, Scott, my question would be, and obviously I think Tommy's asking this too, what have they brought those questions in and revised to make sure that is set, or not?
But I guess that's because we talked about the wet areas, and that would be delineated with construction plans as they move through the process. A lot of it came down to the HOA and what would happen if it were to dissolve, and the uniformity of the tree clearing. And this is what they're proposing to address those.
Okay. Obviously, we've looked at it enough to really give you any opinion on that.
Well, I was gonna ask, have your concerns,
I have no idea, I'm trying to read this right at the moment.
Ms. Carter, do you have anything?
Not right off the top without having gone through everything, and
Okay. I
don't have any.
I've looked through it. I'll just tell the committee where I'm at, is I'm good with it. I think that they have, been, I'll use this word again, they've been massaging it since summer,
Mm-hmm.
and they've done everything that's been asked of them. And I think this is the type of development we need in our community. All the feedback I've gotten from you, they've been great to work with.
That's correct.
And I think that, me personally, I'm ready to move with it. I think we've had it long enough. We either need to vote it up or vote it down. That's my opinion. I'm in favor of it. So thanks for getting this done. I know you sent it out,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Well, I would just, again, Tommy, I would just, even though we have had this for a while, it's been a while getting it back from them. So while that timing has taken, that's obviously taken some time, we've been waiting on it. So I'm not,
How long, just refresh my memory, how long have we, I know it's been an ongoing process. I know you've met with them, Scott, you've met with them, and we've just been, it's kind of just been a work, kind of a working document. It seems like from what I've seen and what I read is they've gotten really close to what has been asked of them on, kind of on the second round. We asked a bunch utility stuff,
well,
back in the summer, correct? And they did all that.
Correct.
But then Andy brought some valid concerns, and we went back to the drawing board with them. And it looks real close. Did they miss anything did I miss anything that they missed? I took a good look at it. I didn't see,
I mean, I guess that's kind of at the discretion of the development committee to see if the concerns have been addressed, because this was their proposal in terms of how they would like to address the dissolution of the homeowners association and how they would address tree clearing and things of that nature. So I would leave that up to the development committee to see if your concerns have been, addressed in what they're proposing. Because I know last time when we had the language for the utility concerns, we worked with the utility committee to get those concerns and craft up language for them. We did not do that this time. We turned it over to them to say, what do you want to propose? And then include this in the revised documentation. So staff did not write this as we did last time.
and I think that's what I'm saying is, from what I see, it looks like they have. I'm asking, from your opinion, do you believe that they've met all those things?
For my opinion, yeah, I think there's quite a few things in here that they.
so how are they gonna guarantee the maintenance for the sites that we don't have any control of? So for instance, cutting through Beechwood Trails,
Mm-hmm.
how are they proposing to bond that work? How do we enforce the maintenance of those roads if if damage happens or if mud's on the road or whatever? I don't see anything in here. How do they remedy that?
There wouldn't be anything in the development text to address that.
So how are they gonna do that?
That would be performance bond through Harrison Township, so they would need to negotiate with Harrison Township to do that.
And so we have that now? We know that that's already happening?
We do not know that,
So,
because we're
so
not
again,
at that
we're
point.
getting this piecemeal, and that's the irritation that I have, is I've gotta go in, and I'm trying not to. So we've met with them, we've gone through some things, we get something back, we go meet with them, we get something back. I'd love to look at this to make sure that they've addressed the majority of our items, but there's items out there that have been brought up as public concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't hear an answer, quite frankly. So I don't know that you can enforce that, but they've gotta bring that to the table. They've gotta show us that they're covering that aspect, right?
Don't they have to
Performance
go to
bond?
Harrison Township?
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that part of the,
That's typically part of the development process. Once we get construction plans, final plans, then we move on to pre-con and things like that. It's
I'm
typically-
asking, I don't know.
It's typically when performance and other bondings are submitted to the city and or, in this case, Harrison Township.
I don't have my notes with me, so I won't be able to tell you. I didn't bring the text with me that I had looked at and marked up. I didn't know that they were gonna prepare these and hand these to us tonight. So, I'd be glad to look through them and give you my 2 cents on it, but, I mean, you're talking about, there's another part in here where they talked about if the HOA does go away,
Mm-hmm.
it's 100%. They need a 100% vote to dismantle the HOA. Well, there's 2 pieces to an HOA. It's funding and it's and voting to get rid of it. Well, if they don't have any funds to take care of this, what happens? This is gonna be, it's the same, it comes down to the same item. They could have an HOA, but nobody's maintaining anything. Nobody's, I'd love to look through it and see what other blue line and red line they've had. But I certainly would hope that they'd be able to answer the question of who's gonna do the maintenance in Harrison Township.
The mayor, you're saying 1 minute, I thought we had till 7, am I wrong?
We have a
No,
public hearing at
We have a
6:50.
public hearing at 6:50.
Crap, I'm sorry. Well, I'll bring it up in my report, and if council wants to move forward, we'll have some discussion. And we'll do our scheduling of the next development committee meeting at that time too. So I'll take it for now, cause, yep, we gotta go.
Motion to adjourn.
Yep, second.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought we had till 7, my bad.
It's all right. Let me know when you're ready, Kathy.